This is Nobody Cares. I've decided to publish the audio that I did about bridge, mainly because bridge was such a big part of my life. This is not going to be bidding problems with a quiz at the end. In fact, it's not really about bridge at all. It's more about what bridge did for me and about my very unique way that I got into the competitive world of duplicate bridge. So we had some bridge players in Sandstone, and it took us a while to find each other, but we did. And I want to say there was maybe 8 or 10 at the most, and a couple of them you could just discard. They just thought they knew how to play bridge. But basically, we just had one table of decent players. I was part of that table. And the other characters there were Stacy, and that's his nickname. He was from Vancouver Island. He was quite the guy. He was a very personable guy. One parent was black and one parent was white, so he was also the head baker in there. Like I say, he was a very versatile guy. He was kind of hard to pin down for a game. He had so many different interests and things that he was doing and different friends and everything. Stacy's partner was the head chef in the kosher kitchen, and I'm damned if I can remember his name. In fact, I'm having trouble really putting features to him. That's my memory for you again. And my partner was, and I'm just going to give you his first name, was Jerry. And Jerry was from New York City originally, but he was living in Las Vegas, and he'd gotten in trouble for placing bets for jockeys back in New Jersey. I guess the races were being fixed, and I don't know, I never really heard the entire story, so didn't ask, don't care, doesn't matter. He did tell me a few things about that later, about horse racing, and it's not like you can pick the winner. He said, no, that's not how it works. That you don't do that. He said, what the jockeys can do is they can guarantee you that the favorite or a certain horse won't win. That's all they can do. But the result of that is that it just throws the field wide open and changes the odds. Anyway, that's what I want to talk about. Jerry, he was typical New Yorker, I would call him. Like he had that New York drawl. It's not really a drawl, but you know what I mean, way of talking. And he was a tall man. I don't know how tall, because his neck had been fused. So it was on a permanent tilt forward. But he was probably, I don't know, I want to say 6'4", but with his neck tipped forward, his head tipped forward permanently, it brought him down to my size, which is 6'2". He showed me the bullet holes. There was 3 bullet holes, and one bullet still lodged in his neck. And the bullet holes ran diagonally up his belly and his chest, and starting in the belly and then going upward, and the 4th one had hit him in the neck. And the first 3 had missed the liver, the lungs, the heart, all the good stuff, and had gone right through him. And it's funny, it's the only time I'd seen bullet holes in a body. And where they go in is just like a little pucker mark, but where they come out is quite the mess, a big scar. Like he had these 3 big scars on his back. And they couldn't do anything about the 4th one in his neck, or they were afraid to, because he could end up quadriplegic in a wheelchair. So they'd fused his neck, and he was fine. So and he was a very personable guy. Had his own charisma and this crazy laugh. When he liked to tell stories, and when he laughed, you laughed. He was one of those kinds of guys. So when we were sitting, playing cards, say, it was fine. Like I could look straight across him and straight into his eyes and everything. And but if we were standing up, because I'm so tall, and now because his neck was tilted forward, or his head was tilted forward, he'd have to lift his eyebrows and raise his eyeballs would come up to the top, up to the top to look at me probably. And so he always sort of had this it was kind of like a surprised look on his face, or just because of what he had to do. Turned out that the reason I'm telling these bridge stories is because not so much about the bridge, which we all enjoyed playing, of course, but it's what bridge did for me. Like, I would never have met a guy like Jerry if it hadn't been for bridge. The same with Stacy, I probably would have anyway, because he's Canadian, and us Canadians always hung around together a little bit. With Stacy, first of all, being the head baker, he would on Saturdays be able to get into the kitchen, and all the hacks are in on this. And he would make pastries, Danishes in there. As good as any that you can buy anywhere in the world. Like with that phyllo pastry that's that all those layers, thin layers, layer after layer, and baked right. And then there are all kinds of jam in there. He told me the jam comes in 25-gallon drums, blueberry, strawberry, raspberry, whatever. So he'd have the jam in the middle and then drizzled with that nice white icing on them. And Stacy would bring each of us a Danish. Not every time, of course, but whenever he made them, if we had a game later that afternoon, or I would never have gotten a Danish if it hadn't been for bridge. That's what bridge did for me. And Jerry was a very interesting guy, for sure. And we did become friends, not like we were searching for each other and chumming around. It wasn't that kind of a friendship, but the bridge. But when we would run into each other and stand and chat and maybe walk around the track, make a couple laps around the track, that kind of thing. And he was just a very, very interesting man. And I did find out that he was making book in there. He was a bookmaker, and apparently not the only one. And this is a world that completely foreign to me. I knew absolutely nothing about it. And I was amazed to find out that there was people in prison betting as much as $100 a game on every college football game on Saturday and every pro game on Sunday and Monday night. That pretty much blew my mind. That's major heavy stuff. There would be no cash for that kind of thing in prison. So settlement would take place somewhere else outside the walls. I never knew anything about any of that stuff. Yeah, Jerry, my bridge partner. When I got down to Leavenworth, that's where bridge really took off for me. If you can believe this, the ACBL, the American Contract Bridge League, had an accredited bridge game at the prison. One game a week. And I have no idea how that ever happened, how it got started. Don't care. When I got there, it was on. And I know that it did end not too long after I left there. The talk was already on by the time I was getting short and getting ready to leave, that the end was in sight for the bridge. They had decided that this was not good, for the inmates. Yeah, right. But anyway, so Sunday night was this game, and I met all the guys. There was quite a few in there that played bridge. Now, people from the town, the bridge players from the town would come in for this. There wasn't a lot of them, but there were some regulars. And they came there strictly to pick up the master points, right? They come in there thinking they're going to go 1, 2, 3, first, second, and third, pick up all the master points, go home, see you next Sunday, okay? But we managed to change that. Now, it took me a while to find a partner. Like I say, there was quite a few inmates that played bridge. Some who thought they did. It was always those guys. And some that did, but you can't just go and steal somebody's partner. There's partnerships had already been formed. And so, like I say, it did take some time. And I played with some guys that I wasn't really very nuts about playing with ever again. But there was one guy, and his name was Tom Morris. And I got talking to him, and I eventually managed to get a game with him, and we got talking. We got along good. We eventually became a permanent partnership for the Sunday night games. We could probably I doubt that we ever had more than 7.5 tables total. There would be times when there would only be 5, depending on how many people came from the town. Not all of the bridge playing inmates would show up every Sunday night. Generally, they did. It was great. It was fantastic. I looked forward to that as much as anything, playing that game on Sunday nights. I'll just tell you a little bit about some of the people who came in. Just typical bridge players. There was an older black couple. They came virtually every time. And he was retired guard. But Leavenworth is a prison town. There's not just the 2 federal prisons, but there's also a girls' prison somewhere near there. and the military stockade is there. And that's what this guy, what he's retired from. He had been at the stockade. There was another couple that all bridge players will recognize, and that's the know-it-all husband and the meek wife who is blamed for everything. I could have just fucking throttled that man more than once, but obviously you can't. You just keep quiet. And, he would berate her, and I guess she had no way of getting out of it. This is something they did together, or maybe she liked being berated. Like, who knows? It's a crazy world, right? And so there was those two. There was Ellie and Georgia. They came virtually every Sunday as well. It was on their social calendar. This was their little get out of the house, one of their little get out of the house evenings. I'm going to come back to them in a second. And there was also this gal, and I can't remember her name. She was older. I shouldn't call her a gal, this lady. We learned from probably from Georgia and Ellie, because they were always telling us stories. I wish I could remember her name, because it seems wrong to just talk about her without knowing her name. But that she had paid for her. She was a life master, but she had paid for it. She had played with a pro to get this, to accomplish this. This is all news to me. What are you talking about? Professional bridge players and life masters? Like, I didn't even really know anything like life master. What's that? Master points. I'm just learning about master points and duplicate bridge. Anything I played before that was just kitchen bridge, rubber bridge. So this was all brand new to me. Well, she was quite the gal, this one. Like, she thought she was something because she was a life master. And apparently she did have money. There's a difference between wealthy and rich. I'll put her in the rich category, I guess. And she was on her second husband. And her husband I did like. He came as little as he possibly could. That's my determination. If he could figure out some way not to come. But he did play with her, say, once a month. But she always came. And she would have a partner. She'd bring somebody with her. And I remember her, she was the time she'd have the glasses on the string that hung down in front of her, and she'd put those up on her face and look very important. And while she was studying her hand and making her decisions, and she wore a wig. Even I could tell it was a wig, and she had like a pound of makeup on. I still wonder if maybe if we'd removed the wig and took that pound of makeup off, that might actually have been Jimmy Hoffa sitting there. But anyway, that's pretty cruel. Georgia and Ellie, they were elderly. I don't think they were a couple. I never really got that feeling that they were that way. I think they were just friends. And Ellie was as thin as a pencil, like a pencil with ears. And Georgia was she wasn't overweight, not at all, but she had, in her older age, she had put on a few pounds for sure, and she was a bit crippled. She moved very slowly, and we used to play in the mess hall. Now, when you come in the front doors at Leavenworth, the FCC there, you come into a big foyer area, and it's right on the corner. Like a hallway goes off to your right, and there's one goes to your left. And the mess hall is straight dead in front of you. You simply keep walking straight, and you go right into the mess hall. And that's, like I say, where we played bridge. And so this one night, and Georgia walked with a cane. Oh, and I also want to say, she's the first person that I knew that had blue hair, which I don't understand. I guess like they spray it blue or dye it. I don't know. Like it's white, and then they turn it like this light blue color. Yeah, anyway, this one night, I'm heading down there for the bridge game, and Georgia and Ellie are coming in at the exact same time, and we kind of get to the door at the same moment, and she's having trouble walking, and so I took her arm, Georgia's arm, and escorted her across the hallway and into the mess hall. Well, I'm telling you, it's probably been decades since a man has paid that kind of attention to her and actually taken her arm and escorted her. I have a friend for life now after this. No doubt. But it became a problem. Like, she just thought the world of me, and she was nice. I liked both of them. And honestly, Tom and I, we'd sit down at that table, and if it wasn't a square board, we'd walk away with all the match points on all three of the boards we'd played with them. And that's like every week. Like they never placed in the overalls at all. But Georgia, I'd sit down to play against her, and then I'd feel a little tap on my knee, and I'd put my hand down there, and then she'd hand me some candies that she'd smuggled in for me. Or she'd bake cookies, and she'd put them in a bag, and then she'd sneak these cookies to me like this was like a John le Carré novel, going on here. And it was okay for a while, but it got a little tedious for me, really. Like, what am I going to do? Like, I don't need the candies or the cookies, right? There are these cookies in my pocket for the rest of the night, but she was really sweet. She didn't do it every single time, but enough that it got to be, like I say, a little tedious. But Tom and I did quite well in there, and I don't know how many months we played. I was there 20 months. It was a couple of months before I would have gotten together with him, something like that. I don't really remember. But this was back before computers, and so at the end of the game we had to do hand score everything. And we had a director. He was an inmate. And we had everything we need, all the boards and all the paper and everything, the sheets to go around. Obviously, you have to have all that stuff. You're playing duplicate bridge. And then he also had the little forms that you fill out that put down the master points that you want on. So like with 7.5 tables, that would have been, I'm sure, a maximum. A lot of times would have been 6.5, 7, maybe even 5.5, 6. That would probably be more normal, say 6. So for finishing first, you'd get I don't think you'd ever get more than like 0.73, 0.74, something like that. Second would be 5 something. Third would be, I don't even remember. And all those months that I spent there, Tom and I did pretty darn good. I walked out of prison in Leavenworth. It was over 14. I don't remember exactly. Let's call it 14.5 master points for my time playing bridge there. And when I got home, I put them in an envelope and sent them to the ACBL, joined the ACBL, and they recorded my first 14.5 points for me. That was my entry into duplicate bridge. I was meeting up with a friend on the Canary Islands at Christmas time, and so I had to get there, and so booked passage on, it's actually a ferry and a cruise ship. You could take a vehicle over if you wanted. It's a 2-day, 3-night, or I forget exactly. But what happened is we all get on this ship, and there's a huge storm happening. We were supposed to leave late in the afternoon or early evening, and we didn't. We just sat in port. The ship was packed. We had all these people from Europe, secretaries and executives and whoever they were, and they're on holidays. They're headed to the Canary Islands for Christmas, a couple of weeks off. And so you can imagine what happens. It's a massive party on the ship that night. I met a couple of 3 Canadians who were traveling together, not just Canadians, they were from Saskatchewan, my home province, the first people I'd met from Saskatchewan, so that was kind of neat. So I spent that evening with them, and we didn't get too carried away, but like I say, it was this huge party happening all around us, and this storm is just raging, and wind, and it's squalls with rain, and anyway, get to bed, and so the next morning, like I said, I'm always up early, so I head up and get a coffee, and the storm hasn't quit. It's still going on, going strong. But the boat starts to move. We're leaving port. So, okay, this is good. I guess other people, realizing that the boat was moving, decided that to come up and watch the land disappear as we head out to sea. Well, when we get out past the breakwater, things change. I mean, the sea is just wild. These huge waves, I don't know what the brakes on them would be. I don't even want to guess, but they're massive. And we start rocking and rolling, and everybody's getting sick. It was unbelievable. Like, people were puking and heading back down, and the stench was becoming like everywhere on. There was 3 decks on this ship, and it was, I don't know which one I was on, but I'm sure it was the same on every deck. And I mean, I remember standing and I'm hanging onto the rail by the edge of the ship, and you're going up, you go up and then down and hit the bottom and roll over, and then up the other side and then down you go. And people are disappearing. They're heading downstairs and people puking all over the place. And I'm hanging onto that rail and I'm going to get sick. I can feel it coming. And I remembered when I was 14 years old, I was staying in town with a friend of mine and we had some money. And this guy had 2 older brothers. And we talked the oldest one of them if he could get us some booze. And I don't think he himself was old enough, actually, but he figured he could do this for us. And so he does. And he came back with a Mickey of lemon gin. And so my friend and I went to work on that. And man, that stuff tasted good. And we guzzle this. I don't know what we mixed it with. And so we get, what is our first experience, either one of us, with alcohol. So we're having a pretty good time, we think. And then we got sick, both of us. And I'll never forget that. It was the worst night of my life. Overtop that toilet and puke and puke and puke until there was nothing left in my stomach, and then the dry heaves. I swore then that I was never going to go through that again. I was never going to get sick. It doesn't mean I quit drinking or anything like that, but I was going to know what I was doing. I hated that feeling. So now it's like 7, 8 years later, right? And here I am on this ship, and I'm hanging on that rail. Everybody around me is getting sick, and I can feel it coming for sure. I'm going to get sick. And I just got really steely about it. And I started telling myself, you're not going to get sick. You're not going to get sick. And I clenched my teeth and gritted. And you know what? I got over it. It went away. And as soon as that happened, I was fine. I guess that's called getting your sea legs. But I was great. The urge never came back. And the seas were rough for the rest of that day and well into that night. So that was great. So now here I am. Never saw my new friends from Saskatchewan. They're all sick. I'll say this. 70% would be a conservative number. 80% of the people were sick. That would be closer to the truth, I think. Everybody's downstairs in their berths. And so the ship is pretty much deserted. And there was 3 decks on there, and there's different restaurants and bars, and really not a heck of a lot to do on there. So I'm investigating, walking around, looking at all this, and I came across one, and it was a huge bar that was near the front of the ship, and it was almost the width of the ship, and had these sliding doors on it that they could close or open. I don't know. I guess they did close at night. So I'm standing in front of this. I look in. And there's 3 people, 2 men and a woman, sitting at a table with 2 decks of cards, like diagonal corners, the classic bridge setup with the cards diagonally, 2 decks like that. So I know immediately what these people want. They need a 4th for bridge. I wasn't a really very experienced bridge player, but I did play. I had started back home with mom and dad on the farm, probably more in the wintertime, Sunday afternoon kind of thing. And I always enjoyed the game. And I had continued on with that. And there was a few other people in the hometown my age, who played. And we would get together occasionally. This would be wintertime stuff, right, when not farming. And play bridge and learn the hard way. I'll just add something else in here too. Like when I went to university in 1971, basically because my girlfriend was going to university, which was kind of a stupid reason. I should have been working because university was pretty much a waste of time. And there was a place on campus that was called the MUB, M-U-B, which stood for the Memorial Union Building. It was just a gathering place. There was tables in there and a bunch of vending machines. And I used to go in there quite a bit or meet people there, whatever. And very often, almost, I want to say almost every time I went in there, there was a table or two of people playing bridge. And I knew this, and I was too stupid to go over there and show any interest. I wish I had have, because it turns out, I found out much later on, that those people were some of the founding members, maybe not the founding members, but the early members of the Saskatoon Bridge Club when it was formed. And had I done that, I know I would have been more than welcome and would have been able to ask questions and would have learned a hell of a lot more than I knew. And it would have benefited me greatly because I did develop some bad habits, the amount of bridge I ended up playing before I had learned things that I really needed to know, let's put it that way. So anyway, I see these people, and like I say, I knew what they want. They're looking for a fourth. There's no doubt in my mind. The two decks of cards, like one deals and your partner shuffles and sets them off to the right. You don't want to waste any time. So the next deck is all ready to be dealt, after the hand is over. And I spent the rest of that afternoon, that day, really, sitting there playing bridge with them. And then met them the next day and spent the entire following day playing bridge with them. It was terrific. It was a great way to spend those 2 days on the ship when really there wasn't much else to do. So some 40 years later, I don't remember exactly, I had moved to Salmon Arm in 2003 and was there right up until 2021. It was Christmas time, and I was down in Vernon. I don't know why. It's the week before Christmas. Maybe I was doing some shopping. Doesn't sound like me, but perhaps that was my reason, because I was at the Village Green Mall. And at the mall, there's a huge liquor store. This is a government liquor store, not a private one. And lots of parking there, so perhaps it had something to do with finding a good parking spot. But I did want to pick up some wine. So in I go and grab a basket and make my selections. Now, when I say it was busy, it was like every checkout was open and there was a lineup at all the checkouts. So I get in line and things are going along slowly. And standing in that line, it became apparent to me that the guy in front of me knew the gal who was the checkout, doing the checkouts, bringing the bottles through. And he's trying to get her attention, but she's busy, and so he's not really pushing it. So we move along. She's going beep in the bag, beep in the bag, beep in the bag, and that'll be $47, whatever it was. And so finally, we get it's his turn, and she still hasn't even looked up. And he says, I forget names here. He says, Sandy, and so she looks up and she goes, "Oh, hey, Ron, how are you? I haven't seen you for ages. How are the kids? Blah blah." "Fine, how are you?" Good. Yeah, she's going beep in the bag with his beep in the bag. He says, "God," he says, "I was sort of trying to get your attention." He said, "You're really busy. You don't even look up." And she said, "Oh, no," she said, "the only time I look up is when a bottle of lemon gin goes by." Well, and this is so out of character for me. I burst out laughing. I can't help myself. And she's laughing, and so the guy in front of me, he's laughing too. And so it's nice to see that some traditions haven't changed. The old lemon gin still holds its place in this world.